Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining. Appreciate you making time, whether you're watching here on a two-way platform or on YouTube. Very grateful to you for devoting part of your evening to us and this conversation. As always, these conversations are intended to educate and bring peace, love, and understanding. Lots of chatter from some of the comments over the last two episodes here on two-way. Some people feeling like others are speaking in a way that don't reflect the values and ethos of the platform. Some people are fascinated by these discussions. Other people just want to hear from me who I think is going to win the election. So I'll just say briefly that part of this platform is for learning about what others are thinking who you don't agree with. And sometimes I let people go on a little bit longer than other people would like, because I think we're learning something about the passions, the emotions, the thoughts, the points of view of a particular part of the country. And for those of you who don't like Donald Trump, it's long past time to accept that tens of millions of Americans are about to vote for him again. And for those of you who don't like Vice President Harris, same thing. We're trying to understand not just what's going to happen in the election, but why, and also hopefully contribute to a conversation that no matter who wins the election, there's a little more understanding out there than there would otherwise be. So tonight we're going to talk at some length to two of the longtime members of this community, the Democratic consultant Hank Morris, Republican strategist Alex Castellanos. They are great sparring partners because they're willing to admit when they agree and to explain when they disagree. And we're going to run through a bunch of stuff with them. Then, as always, we're going to want to hear from you all. Please raise your electronic hand if you'd like to be part of the conversation. As always, we'll ask you to say where you are, who you're supporting. And as always, although we love hearing from our regulars, we'd also love some new folks to be part of the conversation. So if you're joining now, whether it's for the first time or not, and you've never raised your hand to speak, we welcome you in. You can say whatever you want, ask whatever you want. The more different voices we hear from, the richer the platform is. So please, again, if you're here tonight and you want to be part of the conversation, and you haven't been before, please raise your hand. Not a huge, giant news day out there, but some things I want to highlight. The vice president and her running mate are on their Georgia bus trip. I've read a lot about what they did. I've read all the poll reports. Not a lot of like super big news has been made. A typical bus trip, lots of different stops, a variety of restaurants and schools and other places. And somebody on here, if you've seen something I haven't seen, please raise your hand and bring it into the conversation. But I don't see a ton of news there. President Trump didn't do anything today. This morning on the morning meeting, we talked about a Truth Social repost that he made of a sexually suggestive, probably too weak a description, photo of Kamala Harris and Hillary Clinton. And I received many emails today about it and texts asking for a full discussion of it. And we're going to discuss it at least somewhat. Always a challenge for people who are journalists or who manage public forums like this, of how much to highlight Donald Trump's more outrageous statements because you give them attention and you're often doing exactly what he would like. In this case, I'm not sure exactly how we're going to discuss it, but we will discuss it some. Vice President does her interview tomorrow, and we're going to look at the Fox polls now that are really teeing up the conversation in terms of trying to get a sense of where the race is. The Trump campaign and some people on Red X have attacked the polls that say they're inaccurate and have raised Fox's past record in some of these battleground states. So I want to look at first the horse race, if we could put that up, please. So you can see they polled the four Sunbelt states. And again, leaving the Trump campaign's denigration of these polls aside, you can look at these as good news for Vice President Harris or bad news. Go ahead and put the poll up, please, if we can. On the one hand, Vice President Harris is doing better in the Sunbelt states than Joe Biden was when he got out of the race. On the other hand, she is not as far ahead in these polls as Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden was in 2020. Noah, are we able to put, there we go. Okay. So up 1 in Arizona, up 2 in Georgia, up 2 in the Silver State, which I never pronounced because I never pronounced correctly, and Trump ahead by 1 in North Carolina. You can look at these as Harris ahead, or you can look at them as I do, as they're all well within the margin of error. But there's, as I said, half empty, half full ways of looking at them, depending on if you're a Harris supporter or Trump supporter. On the one hand, although she's closer than Biden was and doing better in these states than Joe Biden was, she doesn't have big leads there. And the assumption on the part of the Trump campaign, as I talked about last night, is eventually he'll go back ahead in these states once she starts to get the scrutiny and once she gets defined. I think it's important to think about the traits question. And so let's put up the next slide from this poll. I've said from the beginning that this battle to define Vice President Harris is significant, because I think that this will tell you where the horse race is going to end up if you know how this is going to play in terms of how she's defined, right? So, ability to unite the country, Harris ahead, although not by much, given their reputations. Fighting for people like you, Harris narrowly ahead. This is the one that I think is, and I think Alex is going to come in and agree on this when we bring in Alex and Hank, bringing needed change, tied. Obviously, a big part of trying to define Kamala Harris is as the incumbent. If she's defined as the incumbent, if she's defined as tethered to the the Biden-Harris agenda, her chance of winning will be lower. She has narrowed the gap in polling regarding who's best able to handle the economy and immigration compared to where she was, where Joe Biden was. Again, the Trump campaign assumption is they will turn that around with advertising. They will turn that around with the debate. They will turn that around with more media scrutiny of Kamala Harris. We shall see about that. Now, I want to show you a video clip from CNN, which is a CNN anchor interviewing a senior official from the Harris campaign. And I think it's significant because it gives you just a taste, depending on how Dana Bash conducts the interview tomorrow, it gives you a taste of the difficulty of doing what Kamala Harris has avoided doing up until now, which is repudiating past liberal positions that she took in 2019 as a presidential candidate that she doesn't want to own now. And she's repudiated them through anonymous aides, kind of piecemeal, telling different news organizations, yeah, she doesn't believe in the Green New Deal anymore. Yeah, she doesn't want to abolish ICE anymore. Yeah, she's no longer opposed to fracking. So watch how this professional spokesperson handles the question of, is she against fracking now or is she for fracking?
Progress that we've made here, that goes for energy production and it goes for the economy across the board, right?
But on fracking, was there something that changed her mind specifically during the 4 years of the Biden presidency?
No, listen, again, the vice president is very proud of the Biden-Harris administration's record on energy production and the economy writ large. She wants to continue to build upon the progress that we've made here. That goes for energy production and it goes for the economy across the board, right?
But on fracking.
Okay. So Michael Tyler, very smart guy, professional communicator, and he couldn't really answer the question, right? And this is a category of question that I'd be surprised if it doesn't come up a fair amount tomorrow in the interview with CNN, which is, they're basically two related questions. One is, why did you change your position? What did you see? What did you learn that made you change your position? And the other is, how do you differ from President Biden or the Biden-Harris record? Those two related questions, I think, will come up tomorrow. And as I said, the Trump campaign is counting on her having no more success in answering these questions than you saw her spokesperson there just on the question of fracking. I assume he was ready for the question. It's pretty obvious one. It's one right up there. And of course, because fracking is so central in Pennsylvania, and because Republicans plan to, no matter what she says about fracking, try to hang around her neck the past public statements in support of banning fracking, fracking may be the most important one in terms of the Electoral College. So it's going to be interesting to see again how she handles that. As I said, I look at that little soundbite clip from CNN, and it puts into me sharp relief about how difficult it is to explain it. One of the things that has not happened, and there's been almost no journalism about this, and I've been asking about it from the beginning, is her repudiation of her past positions has not called the grassroots left, progressive left, or Bernie Sanders or AOC or others to even express disappointment in her beyond the most mildest of disappointment. Bernie Sanders, believes the Green New Deal is where the things should be at, where the party should be at, and she's just repudiated that. So people think that the only issue, they often cast as the only issue related to her explaining her issue positions and her presumed professed changes is, will people think she's a phony? Or will she backslide to the left? Or will there be word salad? But I think there's an additional issue, which is to actually explain them in a way that is credible and substantive. Almost by definition means that the left will be disappointed. There's no explanation you can give for being in favor of fracking that the left will say, well, that's convincing. And so, as I said, let's watch closely in the interview for that in particular. I've been asked by several folks to address the House and the Senate. We're going to do that at some point in more detail. I get all sorts of suggestions for people. Do a show on this, do a show on that, and we'll do more, and we're planning more. But we're new, and we're still trying to figure out the right cadence for everything. Even when we switch the time of this program, we receive a lot of opinions about why we're switching it to the wrong time, even as we get lots of great emails from people saying, thank you for moving it to 9 o'clock. Kids are abed. I can do it now. Thank you. House, there's about 25 competitive races. It's almost certain that they won't all break one way. They could, but it's unlikely. Some of them, very few of them, are in battleground states. They're all going to be largely fully funded. I think the conventional wisdom remains correct that in all likelihood, the winner of the presidential race will have the House majority by a narrow margin. It's not a definitive thing. And it's too soon to say where you should push to 25 competitive races. I went through them and familiarized myself as much as I was able to with who the candidates are, how much money they've raised, et cetera. It's still kind of unclear. Some are open seats. A lot of are incumbents running either Republicans in Biden districts or Democrats in Trump districts. I would say right now, again, I think that in all likelihood, the presidential winner will also have the House. I remain, as I've been the entire cycle, more bullish on Democratic chances in the Senate than just about anybody but what Chuck Schumer claims to believe. I really do believe they could hold Montana, which is after West Virginia, which is a sure loss, the most likely, and most people believe, to flip from Democrat to Republican. There's about 10 other Democratic held seats, some with incumbents, some with open seats, that could potentially flip, but they may not. And as I've said before, there's two historical facts that are in conflict, one of which we'll have to give in some of these races. One is it's almost unheard of. Susan Collins is an exception for a senator of one party, a Senate candidate of one party, to, whether incumbent or not, to win their state if the presidential candidate of their party does not win their state. And so obviously in Ohio and Montana, you see that in particular as an issue. But the other historical reality, which I've long been a believer in, based on the data and the history, is if you're an incumbent senator who's well-funded, who works hard and doesn't have a scandal that's significant, you can only be beaten by an A candidate. Sometimes you can be beaten by a B+ candidate, but nothing lower than B+. And if you go to all of these competitive races, with the exception of Pennsylvania and Michigan, the Republican candidates are not A candidates. And I would say some of them are D and E candidates in at least one case. And most of them are C or B candidates. Their performance to date makes me think they're C candidates. Maybe they can push to B. Can they push to B+? I don't know. But these are hardworking incumbents in Montana, Ohio, Wisconsin, Silver State. I'm missing one, maybe not. Michigan is an interesting one, and I continue to believe it's a canary in the coal mine. When Joe Biden was going to be the nominee, no one adequately explained to my satisfaction why were all the Democratic Senate candidates doing much better than Joe Biden in all these states. I can't explain why Congresswoman Slotkin is ahead of Mike Rogers in Michigan. Just don't understand it. He's better known, as best I can tell. He's a perfect, biographically and otherwise stylistically, he's a perfect candidate for Michigan as a Republican. And yet he's behind in every poll I've seen. There's something going on with the brand or Trump effect or something that's allowing these Democratic Senate candidates in every case to be doing quite well. And even in Montana, where there's some polling that's not great that shows John Tester behind, he's within striking distance. He's certainly in better position than Susan Collins appeared to be when she was able to keep her seat. So I don't think Democrats can get more than 50, but I think they can get 50. And I also want to say Republicans could sweep them all. Senate races, unlike House races, tend to make their own wind and weather, not as subject as the president, as the House races are to what happens at the presidential level. But I do believe that, again, in Montana and Ohio, the incumbent Democratic senators can outrun a massive blowout, 30-point blowout or something at the presidential level. And Harris is interesting in that both parties, both chambers, House and Senate, are just getting their post-convention polling back. Some have it back. Some will have it back after Labor Day. And the general view so far from the folks I've talked to who've seen that data is Harris helps in some races, Senate and House. She hurts in others, not as good for Joe Biden and others. It depends on the demographics of the state or of the district. It's too soon to say exactly what the overall pattern will be. But in the data for Biden was the nominee and now with Harris, it does not appear that their Democratic Senate candidates are going to be held down by the top of the ticket in these states because, again, they consistently continue to outrun both Harris and Biden. Okay, so I'm going to open it up now to bring in Lauren Leader, my two-way colleague, bring in Alex and Hank, and we're going to talk about some of these issues and then want to get to lots of your questions. Please, if you want to ask a question, if you've not been involved before, I'd love for you to raise your hand, and we'll get to lots of you tonight to ask about whatever you want, including the topics I've just raised here. So ask Hank to come in here, ask Alex to come in here, and Lauren to come in. And Alex and Hank, I'd love for you guys to start with the question of the Fox polls. Let's go ahead and put them back up briefly, at least, so everybody can see them again. And you guys, just Hank, you first. And I know you and I have been texting about these. Do these Fox polls, are they good for Harris, bad for Harris, or meaningless for Harris?
I think that depends on where the blue wall is. If the blue wall is 4 or 5 points in all of them, I think these polls are great for Harris. If the blue wall is 1 or 2 points, including her down by 1 or 2 points in Pennsylvania, I think it's terrible.
Yeah, put the horse race back up if you can, not the issues. Alex, what do you think? Basically tied in the 4 Sunbelt states. Is that good news for Harris after several weeks of great press, or bad, or neither?
Well, I think you can make the case that it's both. But if I were in the Harris's campaign shoes, I'd want better numbers than this. Because it's a war of attrition. It really begins now. The definition of Harris, she's more of the blank slate than Trump is. There's not much you're going to say to change who Donald Trump is. He's made sure of that for good and ill. She's the undefined figure in this, and you think that having a campaign will do that, her own and Trump's. And so is there anywhere for her to go up? I don't see it. Are there places for her to go down? Yes. So, and we've seen that pattern before in Hillary's campaign and, Dukakis's campaign, et cetera. So, yeah, I think I'd want a little more air under my wings if I know I'm going to be closer to landing by the time there's an election.
Yeah, I don't think
Hank,
they feel that way. Yeah, I don't think the Harris campaign feels that way at all. They do not want blowout numbers. It's not good for them because they need to motivate voters to turn out. And the close election, close polls is actually very good for turnout and motivation for people.
Lauren, no campaign pros think that. You want to win more money at the craps table, not less.
Well, right now, they're not struggling to win money.
You want to lose, so we motivate our people.
With respect, I'd love to finish my point. They are not worried about the money. They have now just broken every money raising record imaginable. And beyond the money, what I think is a better measure is the volunteer turnout, the numbers of people in a lot of the battleground states, including Georgia and elsewhere, who are volunteering to go door to door. And I disagree that there's not more room for her to continue moving up, in part because they are invested heavily in a ground game. And that ground game, I will always believe, and I've never been proven wrong, that doing the work on the ground and at the doors is always an advantage. So I think that
agree, Lauren. I would agree with all of those things, except ground games aren't persuasion. Ground games are about turn. Now, if you like, and I'm sorry I interrupted, I really am. I'll try to behave better. But ground games don't persuade. Otherwise, Procter and Gamble would be selling Tide to new people door to door. Ground games organize and deliver what you have. All of those things, money, etc. My point is, she's the undefined candidate here, for good or ill. Her campaign has been hiding her, maybe to prepare. Maybe she'll come out as a rock star and be super strong. But I think there's more risk that she won't, that the idea of Kamala, of what she could be, the blank slate that a lot of these people are projecting their hopes and desires on. Look, this country would rather not have either Biden or Trump, right? Well, Biden's gone. A lot of the country would love an alternative to Trump, and she's the generic Democrat. And that leaves her a lot of room.
I think that is just such a total misread of how people
I've
feel
been
about
wrong
her,
before.
especially young voters who are fundamental to the Democratic coalition and who helped Biden win in 20 and are now an even larger share of the vote than they were in 20. I mean, I just think that is like, I mean, look, the American elections have always been close. They will continue to be close. But I think she walks into this moment, given that there is just a few weeks really till people start voting in some key states. And, we have early voting starting in September. It is serving her well. I think that there is this kind of momentum around what people, perhaps you could say it's what they want her to be, but she's pretty spectacular at the DNC. And I disagree about the doors. And I think part of why the campaign is investing so heavily, and this is part of what I think is part of the news from Georgia, is the willingness to go in and door knock in places where Democrats don't historically go. And that was the biggest criticism of Hillary Clinton in 2016. And I think they're trying to dispel that this time and go convince people.
That was the DeSantis strategy.
Hank, I want to ask you about the polling and this difficult question that Trump has raised since 16, which is this notion that his supporters are undercounted. And the point that Trump people are making now, which is, sure, he may be a little bit behind in some number of the battleground states, but he's much closer to his Democratic opponent than he was to Hillary Clinton, who he narrowly beat, to Joe Biden, who he narrowly lost to, and that this is good news for Trump that he's close. Is that a persuasive argument to you?
Well, it's better news than if he was further behind from Trump's point of view, A. But B, I think the big point here is that there was no Trump fatigue in 2016. There was a little bit of Trump fatigue in 2020. There's a hell of a lot of Trump fatigue in 2024. That's number one. Number two, Alex keeps saying that Harris is not defined. I think that's 10% true, but 90% not true, because she's totally defined as not Donald Trump. And she's very defined as not Joe Biden, because the worst you could say is she's a young version of Joe Biden. That's not the same as Joe Biden. So I think I think she's very, very well defined to that extent. I'd like her better defined as a center left as opposed to far left, which I wish she had done. You know, there's a couple of basic, and I have no data except for public data. I have no inside information. There's a couple of things I know. One, white people, as the majority of white people, don't vote Democratic in presidential elections anymore. And I would say that's been true for certainly a generation, probably longer than that. So that's just a fact. So she can't blow the numbers out in a ridiculous way because they're just not there. The second big thing I know is that elections are comparative choices. It's a choice compared to who? Not well defined compared to who? And I think Trump was very, very, very well defined compared to Trump, compared to Biden. And people were viewing Trump through a prism of not liking Biden, having Biden fatigue, worried that Biden wasn't up to the job anymore. All of a sudden that changed. And now there's a new prism. There's Trump versus somebody else who happens to be Harris, who appears to be very acceptable. And the Trump people have not done anything to try to define Trump according to the new prism. He's just the old Trump, which people are sick of. So
Let me ask you both then, what does the ground game do for, I mean, both candidates, right? I mean, they are both, Trump has invested much more significantly in a ground game than he was in 16. They've been doing that for years now. Same thing, you know, obviously Harris, as I said before, trying to run ground game in places where Democrats historically don't go, like in rural parts of Georgia. Does it, so Alex, it seems like you don't think it makes much of a difference. I guess the question is
Well,
for
not
both of you,
true.
why do it?
If that's the impression I gave, sorry about that. I just think it performs a different function than persuasion. Persuasion in campaigns used to be a function of mostly paid advertising. Boy, has that changed. It was never really that powerful in presidential paid advertising. It's everything, you know. Campaigns, the media drove the narrative, what candidate events and ability to create media. But that's what persuaded people. Uh, the ground game is exactly that. It organizes people and delivers what you have. And I think the Democrats are by far better at it than Republicans in early voting. And Republicans only have an advantage on election day voting because we failed so miserably in the early voting. But it's about delivering what you have. It's not a persuasion mechanism is all.
But Alex, the people who are undecided, who are going to determine the election, either undecided because they don't know whether they're going to vote or not, or undecided because they don't know who they're going to vote for, they're cross-pressured. And if the ground game pressures them in the right way, in a targeted way, if it's set up so it's from people that they trust in a close election, which is what we all think this is going to be, it really, really could matter.
I would say maybe Hank, but my experience is different. My experience is that it's much more efficient to use your ground game to deliver people, you know, buses in the
Well, you
inner.
do both. You do both.
Yeah, I DeSantis tried that. He tried to create a candidacy with organization.
Now, primaries are different because
Let,
It
let,
should
let me
be
ask you guys,
more
let
effective
me,
in a
let me
primary.
guys ask you a question about the interview, and then I want to open it up and let other folks in. Do you have any anticipation that she can help herself in this interview with CNN? Or is it simply a matter of avoiding a problem? And if she can't help herself, what would that message be?
I would say if she is substantive, if she has more depth than I think she has, then exposure is good for her. But there's a reason she's being prepped and media trained and been kept out of the limelight. And she has a history on social media that I think tells us who she is. There's a reason Democrats thought she wouldn't be the strongest alternative. So, and look, I think Hank is right. She is well defined as not Trump. And I'm saying that's her best campaign if she's not.
It's a hell of a campaign, Alex.
It really is. Look, he can beat Trump. Trump can beat Trump. He has before. By the way, Mark, to your point on Senate races, what is it that sweeps across all these Senate races and makes Democrats run better than you would think they might? It's Trump. Because he is any car Trump's driving needs a brake pedal. He scares the hell out of people, right? The chances that he might win is affecting every single Senate race. Nobody wants to send a car to Washington that's got, a Trump as the accelerator, Trump on the steering wheel, and Trump on the brake pedal.
So the answer is to make him president, Alex?
Yeah, because half of America thinks he is that. Half of America thinks
it's a half minus.
situation.
It's not a half.
Well,
not a half.
that's what we'll see. What I'm saying is, in my view, that is what makes these Senate races so difficult for Republicans, because you want an insurance policy if you're voting for Trump. People would still support him, but let's tap the brakes too.
Yeah.
Alex,
All right,
we know nationally.
I think that's Kamala's best campaign, is to run against that Trump, which he provides, like with that tweet today.
We know nationally it's half minus. We don't know what it is in Pennsylvania, which is why I'm really sorry that Fox or somebody else hasn't polled Pennsylvania.
Stand by. You'll get a Pennsylvania poll soon, or at least probably two at least. Let's bring in America's pollster, as she's known here at Two-Way, Ann Seltzer. Ann, thank you for joining. I don't know how much you've been able to look at the Fox poll or other public data you've seen, but just give us either your sense of where the race is, or the questions, or both, the questions you have now about understanding where the race is.
Well, a couple of things. Fox News polling, I saw some comments in the chat. People were wondering if they just poll Fox viewers. No, they are a legitimate polling operation, and they should be paid attention to. So if they're showing Harris up, that's a meaningful. I mean, even if you thought they were just polling Fox viewers, that would be meaningful. And I look forward to Pennsylvania in particular. I think that's it. It is, again, just sort of reinforcing what we've been seeing in the last couple of weeks, which is movement toward Harris. It doesn't mean that will last forever, but I can't see from what I've observed that Trump is helping himself there. She still has plenty of pitfalls ahead of her. So we'll see what happens. The one other thing, Mark, I just wanted to address, and I see this sometimes in the chat on YouTube, maybe in particular, is people call me out by name saying that I'm sitting on poll data that I'm deliberately not releasing, which is not the way I do business. My client decides when we release poll data. Just want to say, our schedule is our schedule. There is never any deliberation that we should hold on to something. So I just wanted to set the record on that.
Okay, and thank you for that. In terms of the number in the Fox poll, which is similar to other data about who's the candidate of change, I think we all agree that being the candidate of change is good in this race. Is that something that is historical precedent for? Like, how do you become the candidate of change? Or in this case, how does Harris avoid being the status quo? How does Trump?
How does she avoid it? We'll see how she casts that. I mean, it's a rhetorical situation for her to address, because on the one hand, she's part of the current administration. On the other hand, she is a non-white woman in a position as the first legitimate candidate of a major party. So we'll see how that plays out. But she has all of the instruments to cast herself as someone for change. But the Trump campaign surely has a good argument to say she's not. So this is really whose rhetorical prowess wins out.
Yeah.
But
And
Mark,
this question, you go ahead.
she's also, compared to Trump, a young woman compared to an old man who's been around for a while. So I mean, I think it's de facto she's the candidate of change. Now, when people answering that question answer it through a prism of who they're for president. So in some ways, you're just asking the same question in a different way. And look at the results. It's basically the same as the presidential head to head.
Yeah.
And I think that the underlying problem, the question there is, what kind of change does the respondent want?
Right.
Do they want to go back, which would be change, or do they want to go forward, which would be change? So
Right.
It's not a great question.
Yep. And then one more for you. And then again, I'd love for you to hang around because I bet we have polling questions. Comes up all the time. What's your current view of likely voter screens and potentially undercounting Trump voters in the electorate?
Could we do a whole show on this?
Yeah.
Yes, we could, but tee us up a little bit here and we'll do a whole show.
I'll tee you up with the brief of it, which is I look at everybody's methodology and there are times I just sigh and groan because likely voter screens, people think that there's some sort of magic to it. What you're trying to model, if you're a modeler, which I'm not, is a future electorate, and we don't know what that future electorate is going to look like. Mm-hmm. And so people who are modeling are basing it on past elections. And I don't think it's legitimate to argue that this future election, you can look at past elections and just say it's going to be like that. There has been too much that has happened. I'm famous for saying anything can happen and probably will. And it's never been more true than the last 2 months.
Is it harder in doing a poll? Go ahead, Laura.
No, I was just going to ask, does it not make a difference if you're asking voters how committed they are to vote? Are they definitely voting? Will they vote, et cetera? And to think about it in those terms, because some polls do that.
That's what I do. I ask them, how likely are they to vote? And if they say they will definitely vote, that's a likely voter. I don't go back and look at whether they voted before
in the
because
last election
all the time. I don't go back and make it look like a past election because this is a future election.
But those answers could change over the next 60 days, depending on what happens. I mean, if one of them is good in the debate or bad in the debate, or if it's still perceived to be a close election or not, all that can change a real lot. That's one of the things about IDing voters 60 days out. They're going to change their minds. You better check and double check.
Yep.
But that's the imperfection of every polling method. You're trying to guess a future electorate, and there isn't anything that you can look to in the past that will 100% guarantee that this respondent is actually going to show up and vote.
There is though, if you look, say, at the New York Times surveys, the last 2 election cycles, Trump, and you look at it in swing states. In Arizona, Trump underpolled by a couple of points. In Wisconsin, 4 or 5. In other states, Georgia, less than 1. There are patterns, and there is an argument that says if you can't figure out, it ain't cool to go around saying you're a Trump voter in, say, suburban, more suburban female America, there are a lot of voters out there who get the joke. And so Trump does underpoll somewhat, but I think the record says it's bigger in, say, Wisconsin than it is in a Georgia or even a North Carolina.
We should absolutely do this as a full show because it is like we could literally talk about this for hours.
Yes.
It's so deep, and those outlier polls. So let's do that next week, Mark.
Okay, let's schedule it. All right, we're going to bring Duncan in, and then in the spirit of Larry King and Ken Beatrice, we're going to go to the phones. Lots of questions for you all to fill out the hour. Quickly, Vice President's schedule for tomorrow just came out. She's taping the CNN interview. There was some speculation she might be doing it live. Taping it at 1:45 Eastern. So by the middle of the afternoon, we should be getting some clips. And she's supposed to land in DC at 8:45 at Andrews shortly before the interview airs. We'll be here tomorrow night at 10 Eastern time. So take a nap in the afternoon if you're like me and Hank and ready to go to sleep now. We'll be here at 10 Eastern time to do a post-game show on the interview. So we won't watch it together, but we'll join right after. Duncan, tell everybody where you are, who you're supporting, and what's on your mind, please.
Good evening. I am calling in from Canada, and I am hoping for a Harris-Walz victory. And in that vein, looking to interpret the Fox numbers optimistically. And I understand that there is one view where after 4 weeks of uninterrupted positive coverage, she should be farther ahead. But would it be fair, equally perhaps, to say that the preceding 4 weeks from that was uninterrupted great coverage for Trump between the knockout debate performance, the assassination attempt, and the convention? So he got as good as he could get, followed by Harris getting as good as she can get. Nothing really moved the numbers until these 4 weeks for Harris, where she has really improved over where Biden was at his nadir before getting out. And so can we look at the improvement that Harris has experienced as perhaps being meaningful, even in light of the fact that she has had 4 unsustainably good weeks? That's my first question. And secondly, this is, I think, just to you, Mark. You've been somewhat elliptically alluding to hearing about private polling numbers that might suggest the race isn't as positive for Harris. Is there any light you can shed for us on those private numbers?
Just that she's doing better in the Sunbelt states than the Fox polls have it.
And in the Rust Belt, do private numbers in the Rust Belt show that she is weaker than we might think now?
In Pennsylvania, yes.
Okay, thank you. And so those are my questions. Thank you for taking my call.
Yeah.
Love the platform.
Thank you, Duncan. Who wants to take this question of the blender mix of Trump having a great run and then Harris having a great run?
I'll just add one quick thing to Trump's great run. Even with his great run, he never got back up to his peak in the, say, Real Clear Politics polling of July 30th. He just has a ceiling. And every time he stands up, he hits his head on the ceiling. And again, look, I'm a Trump guy, I'm a Republican and all of that stuff, but I'm trying to call him as I see him here. And it's very hard for him to move. And it's very hard to move the vote against him. So,
Duncan,
Alex,
thank you. Dave,
Alex, if he's going to move, they have to tell people something additional about him that they don't know, which I don't like giving the bad guys advice, but I would love to hear Trump explain. Everyone's talking about Harris has to explain this and that and this and that. I'd love to hear Trump explain why he's so goddamn crazy. Why he's over the top in terms of the personal attacks. Now, I could write a spot that there's a good answer to that if he chose to give it. You know, I'd like to know something interesting about him that I don't know, something that he really, really cares about, which is not going to change his image, but it's going to refresh it. It's going to layer on a new color.
They did it for about 15 minutes at the convention with his granddaughter's speech, and then that thread just was completely dropped. David, tell everybody where you are, who you're supporting, and what's on your mind, please. You're good, David. Go ahead.
Yeah, hey, I'm good. Thank you. Appreciate your putting me on. I'm an independent, voted for Trump in 16 and Biden in 20. So I'm open to, I still haven't decided on who I'm going to vote for.
Where do you live, David?
I live in Dallas, Texas. I have a son in college. One thing I haven't heard much on this show, and I've been watching from the beginning, is a lot of dialogue about the campus protests from the spring that was dominating the news and what's going on in Israel and overseas. I do think it's one of those issues that is going to become a much bigger issue in the fall and is being undersold right now. While I don't necessarily love Donald Trump's perspective on this issue right now, I have absolutely no idea what to think about Kamala and her position on these issues. She's very wishy-washy in her statements. I don't have any sense of what her foreign policy is going to look like. And what she thinks about what's happening on American college campuses. So, I guess my question to you guys is, how are those issues going to get addressed? And am I right? Do you think I might be right in my assumption that they're going to rise to the forefront? Because I certainly remember that issue dominating the spring and the news cycles.
Can I ask you a question, David, back,
Sure.
which is that, she got a lot of attention for the comments about supporting Israel and also, human rights in Palestine during her speech.
Yeah.
It was notable to me in the room, and people were sort of surprised by it as in the space. Did it not answer anything for you, or you felt like it was just platitudes? What else? I mean, she obviously talked about
I support Israel. I support the Palestinians. Like, that's not answering the question. What would you do? What did you expect Israel to do? How are you going to solve this intractable problem? What is your positioning going to be on it? That is very important. What are you going to do if Iran sends missiles into Israel? Like, we're very close to that happening. I think we're still close to that happening. Are you going to come to Israel's defense or not? Right? Those are critical
do you feel
issues.
like Trump is answering that question about what he's going to do to bring the war to the end? Do you feel like he's doing it better?
I feel like from in his first term, for as many things that I didn't like that he did, I felt he was a strong supporter of Israel. I thought he was very clear about that. So I have a sense of what he would do from what he did in his previous administration. I actually think Biden was strong on Israel. All things being equal, I think he's kind of faded from as far as that goes. But I really just have no sense at all of what her position is.
Well, and I agree with you that I think the campus stuff is going to get very hot again. It's already starting to look that way. Kids are not back to school yet. We've already seen vandalism on college campuses.
Yep.
There's a very strong statement, I'm sure you saw, from the president of Vanderbilt. We have a brand new president at Columbia. And when the October 7th anniversary comes around, I know lots of faculty and Jewish students who are extremely concerned about what it's going to be like. So it's early, and my sense is you're right. I would love to know what my colleagues think, that it's going to get hot again in the coming weeks.
My experience, David, is that you are more risk tolerant when you date than when you marry. And as we get closer to the wedding day, election day, those issues do have more salience, and people do start looking more at an uncertain world. And being new and fresh which she is and is scoring points on, is more valuable now than it might be later. It's hard to believe you're having foreign policy crises like we're having, and we're not talking much about it at all now.
And Alex, what about being crazy? Does that get to be more of a problem as you get closer to election day?
I'm sure. I think I'm trying not to answer it as a pro-Trump guy, but I do think yes. But he does have a record. The world was at peace. At least it wasn't engaged in tinderbox wars all over the place. So, and to your point, Hank, I think, damn it, once again, you're exactly right. If he could explain that a lot of Trumpism is hyperbole and showmanship and theater, that he doesn't drive campaigns with TV spots and policy, he drives a narrative with showmanship. He is very self-aware of that. I mean, he's stood up in speeches and said, crowd wouldn't be here if I wasn't fun and interesting. But it adds to the crazy quotient, which, by the way, I'm not going to say that it's not true. He is Haley's Comet, a very different kind of candidate. But your advice would be good for him.
David, thank you for coming on. Appreciate it. Great question. Great topic. Todd, tell everybody who doesn't know where you are, who you're supporting, and what you have in mind.
Hey, Mark, can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Hey, first of all, I just absolutely love this program, and so thank you. And it's an honor to be on here with such a diverse and thoughtful and respectful group of folks in general. So I just
Thank
a
you.
couple quick things. I'm feeling a little bit bullish.
Todd, remind people where you are and who you're supporting, please.
Sure thing. I'm from Boston, Mass, supporting Harris. I'm an independent, but I tend to lean more to the left. I'm just kind of interested in y'all's thoughts on this in general. I'm feeling a little bit bullish on Harris. I'm not confident, but I was very worried in the last two elections. I thought Trump had a really, really good shot. I felt pretty much sure that he was going to beat Hillary. I feel differently this time, and sort of the feeling around me of my friends and family is that there's an excitement, there's an enthusiasm for Harris that seems real. And I'm wondering, I feel like there's a few things that maybe we're not taking into account when we talk about the polls here. And one is that the ways in which the polls have really underestimated the Democrats in the last couple of cycles, in terms of what was supposed to be this massive red wave, with the special elections in the last couple of years. I think that's something like a 4 or 5%, if you put them in aggregate, kind of underrepresentation of the Democrats, particularly if you look at sort of congressional races, right? So we've seen an overperformance by Democrats in the last 4 years or so in multiple races, right? And so I keep kind of hearing that the polls might be underestimating Trump, but it seems to me, based on the last 4 years, that they might really not be taking into account the enthusiasm.
All right, Todd, that's your first topic. Do you have a second one you want to raise?
I'll just leave it right there because it's a long question.
All right. Okay, Todd, thank you. And
Sure.
do you want to address that? We talked about maybe the polls underestimating Trump. What about Democrats who take heart, particularly in the post Roe being overturned, that maybe there's a secret Democratic vote that the polls aren't picking up?
Well, I don't know if it's secret, but I think that is something that is driving people to vote and to organize other people to go vote. I'm hearing just in the people who get in contact with me and let me know what they're doing and what they're up to from both sides of the spectrum. And there are Republicans who are, and especially here in Iowa, where we have a 6-week ban on abortion, then that is galvanizing voting in a way that it might not have before. So I don't know that the polls are hiding anything. There are some polls that sort of make some assumptions about what's going to happen based on all of this, rather than let their data show them what is going to happen going forward. So we have yet to see how this will all play out. There are so many interesting dynamics. Can't wait.
Could I just ask you very quickly? Thank you so much. I love everything you have to say in every interview I've heard from you. Do you think that there's really something going on in terms of just not fully appreciating the level to which Democrats and Harris supporters themselves might not be, particularly young people, I'm thinking particularly Gen Z folks, might not be really responding in full to some of these polls. So there might be like another hidden group there.
Todd, thank you. Ann?
Yeah, we have yet to see. I used to say that election polling gets harder every year, and now I say it gets harder every nanosecond, because so many things happen that change. The technology is changing. It's just very difficult. So we can only do the best that we know how to do at the moment. And then you sit on your hands and you wait for the election to show us. So
Todd, thank you.
You could be right.
Thank you, Todd. Max, that's a good name for you. Tell everybody where you are, who you're supporting, and what's on your mind, please.
So I am in Kansas City, Missouri, 23 years old, just graduated college. So I'm kind of in the young voter group. I'm supporting Kamala Harris, but I wouldn't say I'm a true diehard Harris supporter. I just can't vote for Donald Trump, and I'm an independent. I consider myself. So I have stuff I agree with on one side and stuff I agree with on the other. What I'm thinking about is, there's a lot of enthusiasm for the Harris-Walz campaign right now on social media. I see it with people that I follow on Instagram and also their stuff, and there's a lot of confidence, but this kind of stems from what I think you were talking about on Smirkanish this morning too, Mark, is that some of the polls aren't necessarily reflecting that, and I'm worried that people are overestimating how good she's going to do in Pennsylvania and what kind of fallout there could be from her or that happening. And then also just like why, like the Biden record is so unpopular. Like, and Biden was his popularity ratings are so bad, and so are Harris's. And all of a sudden, we nominate Harris, and it's like, well, why did we choose someone that Trump can still attack considerably and say, like, this is like she has this record? Like, why didn't the Democrats say, like, oh, let's choose someone else? Like, maybe they'll agree with what Biden says, but or Biden did, but like, why didn't they choose somebody that they can separate that from a little bit? Because this is one of Trump's biggest strengths right now, is to say, like, look, everything that's happening right now that you don't like, she's responsible for it. Whether that's true or not, but he can still say it. So why didn't they take that into account? Also, if Pennsylvania is so critically important, I still don't get why Shapiro wasn't picked if Pennsylvania has this much importance.
Yeah. Max, I'm going to answer those briefly, and then we're all going to ask you questions because we've got a ton, because we're honored by your presence here. One man focus group from the Midwest. They chose her because no one else stepped forward, and they recognized that she had the capacity. She wanted to run, and that they couldn't talk her out of running, and that she had a turnkey for the campaign, for the fundraising, for the staff, for the headquarters, for the political operation. And the chance that someone would have beaten her was pretty low in whatever system was devised. The delegates were Biden-Harris delegates. And so rather than risk a bloodbath and a contentious, long, elongated process through Chicago, they went for her, and they could live to regret it, primarily, I think, for the very reason you said, which is she's a tie to the administration. Governor Shapiro made himself unpickable by the nature of what he wanted out of the relationship, both in the campaign and if they won. And that was his choice to do. They didn't have a normal process to negotiate over. And so I think people who say she made a mistake in not picking him, I really think he basically made it untenable to be picked. But there'll be more about that in history books. Max, I want to ask you, if you think about Kamala Harris as president, what inspires you the most? Not as a candidate, but as president, what inspires you the most and what worries you the most?
I think what inspires me, there's a couple things that inspire me the most. One is that, to go what Hank has been saying periodically throughout the night, she's not crazy like Trump is. I think Trump's a lunatic, but so Harris is not. And also, she brings change, and she has this energy that I haven't seen in a political candidate since I've been able to vote. I wasn't able to vote in 2016, and in 2020, I had my pick of the litter between two old white guys.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't.
And what worries you the most, Max, about her being president, if anything?
What worries me is silly policies that I think, or silly policy propositions that I think are just. I just don't get, like, the price gouging thing. I'm not a fan of that. I don't think that's a winning policy, and I don't think that'll even pass to begin with. And also, I think she's going to be too far to the left. I think we're a country of the vast majority of us are within one standard deviation of either side, and we can't have policies that are way, way too far left. And I don't know if she's actually going to do that, but that's on a lot of people's minds. And she doesn't worry me that much about it, but some of the things she's done in the past, it does kind of worry me, but I'd much rather have her than Donald Trump.
Yes. Lauren.
No, same question. You're asking the question, or for Max?
No, I'm asking you. I've asked you. You've got a question for Max.
No. I think Max is. I love. What are you concerned about her being too far left? Like, what is? You talked about the price gouging and that kind of thing. Is it that you don't trust what she's trying to tell people now about being more of a centrist, or it's her history?
It's a good question. Nothing really, there's not a whole lot that bothers me, but what really bothers me the most, like me personally, like everyone always makes the argument, like, oh, how were you 4 years ago? I'm doing great. I just got my first job, so like I'm doing better than I ever have in life. But I'm worried about division in America. That's like top of mind issue for me is we can't keep going down this path. Like one side is going so far over to this side, and we're just driving an even deeper wedge into American politics, and it's seeping over into regular life. You know, like I have people that I know that like don't want to talk to certain people just because of the way they vote, and like that's not that's not the American way. And if she creates it or she implements policies that kind of keep steering that direction, which I don't know if she will, because I don't know, but if that's the case, then I think that's a recipe for disaster, because I just don't think the way that America is divided right now is a viable path forward. I want us to come back together and be one big happy American family again.
That's what we do here.
Max,
so you're in the right
Max,
place.
yeah, exactly. Max, how'd you find out about two-way?
I'm a big Smerconish listener, so I've been following you for a while. I follow you on Twitter, and I found out about two-way through there, and so been trying to. I love the 9 o'clock, the 9 Eastern time, because I can listen after work, and when you would do them at 3, I couldn't participate when I was at work. So
good feedback.
Well, Max, very grateful to have you here. Thank you. Come back often. Bring your friends, please. Grateful to you.
We need to do an all Gen Z show. We're gonna try to set that up actually.
All right, we're gonna close the night as we always do, hearing from Two-Way's unofficial Rabbi of Love, John Podoretz. John, close us out with a good benediction.
Here.
Close us out with a benediction, please.
Okay, the benediction is that Trump has a ceiling, but he's hit it. And I think the one thing that hasn't been said today is that he is polling better than he has ever polled before. He's not winning in the Fox polls, but he's at 49% in each of them, and he's at 50-1. And remember, he only got 47% of the vote, and his polling average from 2015 until 2021, I don't think he really got up. Ann would know better than I, but
he was Mr. 40. He was Mr. 40. Yeah, he was Mr. 46, right. Mr. 47. Yeah.
So Harris it's a jump ball race because Biden was behind, and Harris has consolidated the Democrats who were like in the fetal position. But Trump is in a better position than he was in 2020 right now. That may stop. Yeah. And tomorrow night is actually pretty important. If she overperforms tomorrow night, the sense of worry on the Trump side and the sense of confidence on the Democratic side is going to be, I mean, it's again 2 months, so a lot can happen in 2 months. But when you wait this long to have this one interview, and if the interview goes really well, they're going to go into the Labor Day weekend with a lot of momentum's not the right word, but a lot of high good feeling that might lead Trump to do the kinds of bizarre things that he did this morning with the Truth Social post that used a word that I don't want to use. So that's where I am, and my benediction to this platform is everybody who comes on here and asks you questions is great, and I'm not saying that like condescendingly. It's like a kind of it's a kind of affirmation of the American system, that people can come together, and people who don't do this for a living seem to be as well informed and intelligent and insightful as people who make hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars a year telling candidates things that don't necessarily get them elected. So this has been very heartening for me.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're all trying to figure out who Max is working for now and how we can hire him away. Thank you for that unorthodox benediction, Rabbi Podoretz. Thanks to Hank and Alex and Lauren and Ann for joining, everybody who had questions. Again, 9 a.m. tomorrow morning meeting, Sean, Tim, and I. And then tomorrow night, the ultimate two-way post-game show of the interview that I'll air on CNN from 9 until 10 Eastern. So we'll see you at 10 Eastern time for an hour to dissect the whole thing. I'm grateful to everybody who participated. Sorry for those of you with questions we didn't get to. We'll see you again tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Eastern time. Thank you and good night.